The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. Picture this. You walk into a room and within seconds, every single person in that space is subtly drawn toward you. Conversations shift in your direction. People want to be near you. They want your attention, your approval, your time. You haven't said a single word yet. So what just happened? What invisible force created that magnetic pull? That is exactly what Robert Greene spent years studying, researching, and distilling into one of the most controversial and fascinating books ever written. Today, we are going deep into the art of seduction. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at human interaction the same way again. Now, before we dive in, let me be very clear about something. This book is not simply about romance. It is not a pickup artist manual. It is not a guide for manipulation in the cheap, sleazy sense. What Robert Greene actually created is a masterclass in human psychology, in the art of influencing others, in understanding desire at its most fundamental level. Whether you want better relationships, more charisma, stronger leadership presence, or simply a deeper understanding of why people do what they do, this book holds answers that will genuinely change how you see the world. So let us get into it. Robert Greene opens The Art of Seduction with a premise that immediately hooks you. He argues that most people go through life being anti-seductive without even realizing it. They push people away. They are too needy, too aggressive, too boring, too self-absorbed, or too obvious. And that is exactly where Greene wants to start, because before you can become a seducer, you have to understand what repels people in the first place. The book is structured in a brilliant way. Greene first introduces us to the different types of seducers. Then he describes the types of people who are most susceptible to seduction. Then he walks you through the entire seductive process, phase by phase, step by step. It is comprehensive, it is historically rich, and it draws on some of the most fascinating characters in all of human history, from Cleopatra to Casanova, from Napoleon to Marilyn Monroe, from John F. Kennedy to the great queen of seduction herself, Ninon de l'Enclos. Let us begin with the seducer types, because this is where things get really interesting. Greene discovered something shocking. There isn't just one type of seductive person. There are 9. And most people are unknowingly using the wrong one. These are not rigid boxes, but they are powerful lenses through which to understand your own natural strengths and how to amplify them. The first type is the siren. The siren is almost exclusively associated with feminine energy, though Greene is careful to note that the principles can be adapted by anyone. The siren represents the ultimate fantasy for men. She is danger, pleasure, and adventure wrapped into one irresistible package. She uses her physical presence, her confidence, and her theatrical nature to overwhelm the senses. Think Cleopatra. Think Marilyn Monroe. The siren does not chase. She does not need to. She creates an aura so powerful that others are drawn to her like moths to a flame. Her greatest weapon is her ability to make the other person feel like they are the only one in the world when she focuses her attention on them. The second type is the rake. The rake is the masculine counterpart to the siren in many ways. He is a master of flattery, passion, and overwhelming romantic intensity. The rake makes women feel desired above all others. He is reckless with his passion. He is dangerous. He lives by his own rules. And that fearlessness, that absolute commitment to the moment, is precisely what makes him irresistible. Think Casanova. Think Lord Byron. The rake understands that most people live in a world of moderation and restraint, and his willingness to go all in on desire is what separates him from every other man in the room. The third type is the ideal lover. This is perhaps the most elegant of all the seducer types. The ideal lover pays extraordinary attention to the fantasies and dreams of the people they are seducing. They do not just see who you are, they see who you want to be. And then they reflect that image back to you. They become the embodiment of your perfect partner, your deepest romantic ideal. This requires tremendous emotional intelligence and observational skill. Greene uses Casanova again here, as well as figures like the Duke of Richelieu, who was famous for crafting personalized romantic experiences that made each person feel uniquely understood and valued. The fourth type is the dandy. The dandy defies conventional gender roles and societal expectations. They are mysterious, flamboyant, and unapologetically original. The dandy attracts both men and women because they represent freedom from social norms. They are their own creation, entirely self-defined, and that independence is deeply seductive. Think of figures like Oscar Wilde, Beau Brummel, or even in modern times, artists who refuse to conform to any single category. The dandy's power lies in the fact that they do not need your approval. And paradoxically, that is exactly what makes you want to give it to them. The fifth type is the natural. The natural is someone who retains the childlike qualities that most adults have buried under years of socialization and self-consciousness. They are spontaneous, open, and disarmingly authentic. They make you feel relaxed and joyful in their presence. Think of Charlie Chaplin or Cary Grant at his most effortless. The natural does not try too hard. They are comfortable in their own skin in a way that most people secretly wish they could be. And that comfort is contagious. It draws people in. The sixth type is the coquette. The coquette is a master of hot and cold, of advance and retreat. They give you just enough to keep you hooked and then pull back at the critical moment, leaving you desperate for more. The coquette knows that satisfaction is the death of desire. As long as you are kept slightly off balance, slightly unsure, you remain engaged. You remain wanting. The coquette plays on your insecurity and your longing without ever quite satisfying either. This is one of the most powerful and potentially most dangerous seducer types in the book. The seventh type is the charmer. The charmer is all about making you feel good about yourself. Unlike some of the other types that create desire through tension or mystery, the charmer works through pleasure and validation. They listen intently. They flatter genuinely. They make you feel seen, heard, and appreciated. Benjamin Disraeli, the 19th century British Prime Minister, is one of Greene's favorite examples here. Disraeli was famously charming with everyone he met, including Queen Victoria herself, and his ability to make people feel special gave him enormous political power. The eighth type is the charismatic. The charismatic possesses an almost religious or mystical quality. They radiate certainty, conviction, and purpose in a way that makes others want to follow them, believe in them, and attach themselves to their vision. Greene draws heavily on historical and political figures here, including Napoleon and figures from religious history. The charismatic does not just seduce individuals. They seduce crowds, movements, entire societies. Their power comes from an unshakable belief in themselves and in their mission. And the ninth type is the star. The star cultivates an aura of mystery and otherworldliness. They are just out of reach. They are more than human, or at least they seem that way. The star is a projection screen onto which others cast their own fantasies and desires. They do not reveal too much of themselves, because the moment the mystery is gone, the fascination fades. Think of classic Hollywood icons or musicians who maintain an almost mythological persona. The power of the star is in what they withhold, not in what they show. Now, after establishing these 9 types, Greene shifts focus to what he calls the anti-seducers. And this section is just as important as everything else, because recognizing anti-seductive behavior in yourself is crucial. Anti-seducers are people who, consciously or not, create discomfort, repulsion, or anxiety in others. They are too clingy. They are too blunt. They are too coarse or crude. They talk too much about themselves. They are too predictable. They lack mystery. Greene lists a variety of anti-seductive types, with names like the brute, the suffocator, the moralizer, and the windbag. Understanding these types helps you identify the habits and tendencies that undermine your natural magnetism. Then Greene introduces us to the victims, which is his somewhat provocative term for the people who are most susceptible to seduction. He identifies specific psychological types and profiles, each with particular vulnerabilities, desires, and emotional needs. This is not about exploitation. Greene frames it as deep psychological knowledge. To seduce someone effectively, you need to understand what they truly want, what they are missing, what fantasy they are living in. He describes types like the reformed rake or siren, who is always drawn back to dangerous relationships, the disappointed dreamer, who is hungry for magic and wonder, the sensualist, who lives through their senses, the lonely leader, who craves genuine connection despite their power. Understanding these profiles allows you to speak directly to what another person actually needs at their core, rather than what they present on the surface. And then we arrive at what I consider the heart of the book, the seductive process itself. Greene breaks this down into 24 seductive moves, grouped into phases. Let me walk you through the major phases and some of the most powerful moves within them. The first phase is all about choosing the right victim and creating the right first impression. Greene says that seduction is a strategic process, not a random one. You do not seduce everyone. You choose carefully. You identify the person who is most open to what you offer, whose psychology aligns with your own strengths as a seducer. Then you work on your first appearance. You want to stand out just enough to be intriguing, but not so much that you seem desperate or theatrical. You want to create a memorable impression, something that lingers in the mind long after the initial encounter. The second phase is about creating tension and mystery. This is where moves like choose the right victim and send mixed signals come into play. Greene emphasizes that desire thrives in uncertainty. If you are completely available, completely transparent, completely predictable, you become boring. You need to introduce an element of the unknown. You reveal something intriguing and then pull back. You make eye contact and then look away at just the right moment. You seem interested one moment and slightly distant the next. This ambiguity creates a kind of mental obsession in the other person. They cannot stop thinking about you because they cannot quite figure you out. One of the most memorable moves in this phase is what Greene calls the poet and the saint combination. You appear to be both deeply passionate and genuinely virtuous. You are not just pursuing someone for base reasons. You seem to have depth, principle, and genuine care. This combination is overwhelmingly attractive because most people are skeptical of purely passionate pursuers, suspecting selfish motives. But when passion is combined with apparent virtue, it disarms that skepticism entirely. The third phase is about entering the spirit and dissolving boundaries. Here, Greene talks about the importance of going deep into the world of the person you are seducing. You learn what they love, what they fear, what they dream about. You speak their language. You mirror their values and their passions. You make them feel that they have finally found someone who truly understands them. This creates an emotional bond that goes far beyond surface-level attraction. Greene draws on the concept of the double, which is the idea that the most irresistible lover is one who seems to reflect back your own ideal self. He also introduces the concept of creating moments of spiritual transcendence. These are experiences shared together that feel somehow larger than ordinary life. A perfectly orchestrated evening, a deeply meaningful conversation, an adventure that breaks from routine. These moments create memories that become anchored to the person who provided them, and that anchoring is one of the most powerful bonds in human psychology. The fourth phase is about deepening the connection through confusion and disorientation. This might sound counterintuitive, but Greene explains that moments of emotional turbulence actually strengthen the seductive hold. When someone is slightly off balance, when they are not entirely sure where they stand with you, their mind becomes preoccupied with resolving that uncertainty. They think about you constantly. They analyze your behavior. They become emotionally invested in figuring you out. This is not cruelty. It is psychology. The moments of coldness or withdrawal that punctuate periods of warmth create a longing that pure constant warmth could never generate. Greene talks here about moves like the insinuation, where you plant ideas and suggestions in someone's mind without stating them directly. You make them think they arrived at certain feelings or conclusions on their own. This is far more powerful than direct persuasion, because people are always more committed to ideas they believe they generated themselves. The art of the insinuation is one of the subtlest and most sophisticated tools in the entire book. The fifth phase is about moving in for the close and creating surrender. By this point, if you have executed the earlier phases with skill, the other person is deeply emotionally invested. The seduction is nearly complete, but Greene warns against rushing this final phase. The anticipation itself is part of the pleasure, and prematurely collapsing that tension can undo months of careful work. Instead, you create the perfect moment. You strike when the emotional temperature is at its peak, when they are most ready to surrender to the experience you have crafted together. Greene also talks in this section about the importance of the physical dimension of seduction. He argues that all the emotional and psychological groundwork of the earlier phases makes physical connection feel inevitable, natural, and deeply satisfying, rather than awkward or forced. When someone has fallen under the spell of a skilled seducer, they often describe the physical culmination of the relationship not as something that happened to them, but as something they desperately wanted and actively chose. Now let us step back and look at some of the overarching themes and philosophies that run through the entire book, because there are several that are worth pausing on. The first major theme is the idea that seduction is fundamentally about the other person, not about you. The greatest seducers in history were not people who were obsessed with themselves or their own desires. They were people who became obsessed with understanding others. Casanova is perhaps the best example. He genuinely loved women. He was fascinated by them. He wanted to understand their psychology, their desires, their fantasies. That genuine curiosity and focus on the other person is what made his seductive power so extraordinary. Greene argues that most people fail at seduction because they are too focused on their own needs, their own anxiety, their own performance. The moment you shift that focus outward, everything changes. The second major theme is the power of patience. Modern culture is obsessed with speed and instant gratification. But Greene makes a compelling case that the most profound seductions are slow, deliberate processes. Every great seducer he profiles takes time. They build gradually. They resist the urge to rush. They understand that desire intensifies with delay. This patience is not passive. It is active and strategic. You are always working, always observing, always planting seeds. But you are never in a hurry because you know that the most powerful emotional bonds are those that have been carefully cultivated over time. The third major theme is self-mastery. To be a great seducer, you need extraordinary control over your own emotions, your own impulses, and your own behavior. You cannot appear needy. You cannot lose your temper. You cannot be transparent about your strategy. You need to maintain an internal composure and confidence even when things are not going according to plan. This is why Greene spends so much time on what he calls the anti-seductive qualities. They are all at their core failures of self-mastery. The person who is too needy has not mastered their anxiety. The person who is too aggressive has not mastered their impatience. The person who is too boring has not mastered their own potential for creativity and charm. The fourth major theme is the idea that seduction is inherently theatrical. Great seducers are performers in the highest sense of the word. They understand that reality is in many ways a narrative that we construct, and they become active authors of that narrative. They create scenes, atmospheres, and experiences deliberately. They think about timing. They think about setting. They think about the emotional arc of the relationship as if they were directing a film. This theatrical sensibility is not fakeness or insincerity. It is artistry. It is the difference between someone who wanders through life, reacting to whatever happens, and someone who actively creates the conditions for beauty, desire, and connection. Now I want to address something that many people bring up when discussing this book, and that is the question of ethics. Is this book teaching manipulation? Is it morally problematic? These are fair and important questions. Greene himself is not unaware of the controversy. He acknowledges throughout the book that the line between seduction and manipulation can be thin. But his argument is essentially this: human beings are always influencing each other. Every conversation, every relationship, every social interaction involves some degree of influence, impression management, and strategic communication. The person who pretends otherwise is either naive or dishonest. What the art of seduction offers is a conscious, sophisticated understanding of this reality, rather than leaving people at the mercy of unconscious and often self-defeating patterns. Furthermore, Greene consistently emphasizes that the most effective seduction leaves the other person feeling genuinely better, not worse. A great seducer does not trick someone into a relationship and then disappear. They create authentic experiences of pleasure, connection, and desire. The seduction of Cleopatra, for instance, was not just about political strategy. It was about creating a world of genuine beauty and fascination that made Mark Antony feel more alive than he had ever felt before. That is not manipulation in the cynical sense. That is artistry in the service of human connection. That said, it is worth acknowledging that the techniques in this book, like any powerful tool, can absolutely be misused. And Greene does not shy away from that reality. He includes examples of seduction gone wrong, of people destroyed by their own seductive games, of victims genuinely harmed by unscrupulous seducers. The book is meant to be read as a sophisticated adult understanding of human nature, not as a license for exploitation. Let me also highlight some of the most memorable historical examples from the book, because Greene's use of history is one of the things that makes this book so uniquely compelling. Cleopatra gets extensive treatment throughout the book. Greene is fascinated by her because she was not conventionally the most beautiful woman in the world. Contemporary accounts actually suggest that her physical appearance was striking but not overwhelmingly extraordinary. What made Cleopatra irresistible to Julius Caesar and then to Mark Antony was her total sensory theater. She created experiences around herself that were overwhelming, extravagant, and deeply personalized. When she first met Antony, she arrived on a golden barge with perfumed sails, musicians playing, and herself dressed as the goddess Aphrodite. She did not just meet him, she created an unforgettable mythological event. And that is pure Greene in action. The siren at her absolute peak. Casanova is another figure Greene returns to again and again. And what is fascinating about Greene's portrayal is how he dismantles the popular image of Casanova as a simple womanizer. Greene argues that Casanova was actually a master of genuine emotional intelligence. He made every woman he encountered feel as though she was the most interesting and desirable creature in the world. He was deeply curious about women as human beings. He listened to them. He remembered details. He adapted to each person's unique psychology. His success came not from technique alone, but from genuine fascination with other people. Napoleon Bonaparte is another figure who appears throughout the book, particularly in the sections on charismatic leadership and on the seduction of large groups rather than individuals. Greene shows how Napoleon's ability to seduce entire nations, to make ordinary soldiers feel that they were part of something epic and historic, was a product of the same psychological principles that operate in romantic seduction. The creation of myth, the projection of absolute confidence, the understanding of what people most deeply desire and fear, these are universal tools. Marilyn Monroe is perhaps the most poignant example in the book. Greene shows how Monroe consciously and deliberately crafted her seductive persona, often in contrast to her private, quite different self. She understood the power of the siren archetype and used it with extraordinary skill. But Greene also shows the cost, living entirely through a seductive persona, never being able to step out of it and be seen as a full human being, ultimately contributed to her tragic end. This is one of the book's most sobering lessons. Seduction can become a cage when it replaces authentic selfhood rather than expressing it. Let us talk now about some of the specific tactics that Greene outlines, because there are a few that are so psychologically precise that they are worth examining in detail. The first is what Greene calls stirring interest and desire, or creating intrigue through absence. He argues that one of the most powerful things you can do in any relationship is occasionally disappear. Not permanently, not cruelly, but strategically. When you are always available, always present, always responding instantly, you become furniture. You become part of the predictable landscape of someone's life. But when you step back, when you create a gap, the other person is suddenly forced to notice the space you occupied. They think about you. They miss you. And that absence, that created longing, is infinitely more powerful than any amount of constant presence. The second tactic is what Greene calls use physical lures. This is about awakening the senses and creating an irresistible physical atmosphere. The great seducers understand that desire is not purely cognitive or emotional. It is deeply physical and sensory. The way a space smells, the quality of light in a room, the music playing in the background, the texture of what you are wearing. All of these things communicate on a level below conscious thought, and they create an atmosphere in which emotional and physical desire can flourish. The third tactic is prove yourself. This is about the power of demonstrating rather than claiming. Anyone can say they are fascinating, passionate, or devoted. But actions that prove it without words create an infinitely deeper impression. Greene talks about the importance of performing small acts of extraordinary effort, attention, or sacrifice, not ostentatiously, but quietly and apparently effortlessly. When someone realizes that you went to significant lengths for them without being asked and without expecting credit, the emotional impact is enormous. The fourth tactic is what Greene calls create temptation. This is about making yourself into an object of desire by being slightly out of reach. You project the image of someone whose attention and affection is precious and rare. You do not give it cheaply. You do not make yourself too easy. And the very fact that your approval and affection seem difficult to win makes them extraordinarily valuable in the eyes of others. Let me now bring this all together and give you what I think are the 5 most important lessons from the Art of Seduction for modern readers. Lesson 1. The most attractive quality you can possess is self-sufficiency. People are drawn to those who do not need them, but choose to be with them. Neediness kills attraction. Confidence attracts it. Working on your own sense of inner completeness is not just psychologically healthy. It is the foundation of genuine magnetic presence. Lesson 2. Attention is the rarest and most precious gift. In the modern world where everyone is distracted all the time, giving another person your complete and genuine attention is extraordinarily powerful. The great seducers throughout history were masters of focused attention. They made people feel truly seen. That quality is rarer than ever today, which means it is more powerful than ever. Lesson 3. Mystery is not about hiding who you are. It is about revealing who you are slowly and selectively. The most fascinating people are not the most secretive ones, but the ones who always seem to have another dimension to discover. They reveal enough to create connection and intrigue, but always leave you with the sense that there is more to learn. Lesson 4. Desire lives in the imagination. Greene returns to this idea throughout the entire book. The most powerful seduction is not the one that gives you everything you want immediately. It is the one that keeps your imagination engaged, that creates scenarios and possibilities in your mind that feel tantalizing and just barely out of reach. The great seducer is always managing the imagination of the other person, giving them just enough to fuel their fantasies, without ever fully satisfying them. Lesson 5. Know yourself. Understand your natural seducer type. Understand your strengths. Understand the qualities and habits that undermine your magnetism. The Art of Seduction is ultimately a book about self-knowledge, as much as it is about understanding others. Greene argues throughout that the most powerful seducers are the ones who have done the internal work, who know exactly who they are, and have committed fully to embodying that identity. So, where does that leave us? Is the Art of Seduction a guide to manipulation or a guide to human excellence? I think the honest answer is that it can be either, depending on the reader and the intention. In the hands of someone with genuine curiosity, empathy, and respect for others, the principles in this book become tools for creating richer, more passionate, more meaningful human connections. They become a map to understanding the hidden currents of desire and emotion that run beneath every human interaction. They help you become more aware of what you communicate unconsciously, more intentional about the experiences you create, and more genuinely magnetic to the people around you. In the hands of someone without those qualities, well, they become something else. And that, ultimately, is the reader's responsibility, not the author's. What I can say with confidence is that The Art of Seduction is one of the most psychologically rich and intellectually stimulating books you can read about human nature. Robert Greene draws on centuries of history, philosophy, and human behavior to create something that is genuinely original and genuinely illuminating. Whether you read it as a practical guide, a historical study, or a philosophical meditation on desire and human nature, you will finish it seeing the world and the people in it in a fundamentally different way. And that, in the end, might be the most seductive thing about it. If you want more deep dives into books like this, psychology, philosophy, human nature, the kind of books that actually change how you think and how you move through the world, then make sure you are subscribed because we have so much more coming. Drop a comment below and tell me which of the 9 seducer types you think you most naturally align with. I am genuinely curious, and I read every single one. Hit the like button if this gave you something to think about, and I will see you in the next one.